The question of how musicians' brains and scientists' brains compare to each other is a very fascinating one. There's actually an entire field called the neurobiology of music, and it turns out that both fields are very mathematical in a sense and very analytical, and both scientists and musicians in their field look for basic underlying rhythms and themes that help them to make progress in their work. The same way that musicians will look for patterns and themes in their music, scientists will look at biological events and try and find common themes or common phenomena that are repetitive. Well, what's sort of come to be known as the Alzheimer's gene is the genotype around the apolipoprotein E locus around that gene. And that actually is not a genetic test in the same way we would test for, say, Huntington's, in which you get a black and white answer. Either you have the gene or you don't. If you have the gene, you get the disease. With ApoE4, with ApoE, the apolipoprotein E gene for Alzheimer's, that tells you only about your relative risk, your risk compared to the general population. Each person gets 2 copies of every gene, so you can get either 1 or 2 copies of either a good, a bad, or a neutral version of the ApoE gene. If you have 2 copies of the bad gene, you can still escape Alzheimer's. Likewise, if you have 2 copies of the good ApoE, you can still get the disease. So it's incredibly important for, I think, stratifying drug responses, determining who will probably respond to what medicines. In terms of what it will tell you reliably that you can count on, it's very different from what we think of in terms of a lab test.
But even intellectually, what is the angst of knowing that you might have the gene or be more predisposed than the general public? There's an emotional trigger around the word Alzheimer's. What does it mean to smart people?
It means hopelessness. I mean, I think that's the fear, is that you have a life before you will be one of continuing decline, of loss of the part of, I mean, these are intellectuals, these are people who their brains are what they cherish the most. And they then fear that they are looking forward to a time in which over a 10-year period, a decade or more, it's paradoxical, or if people are well kept or well maintained, they'll live longer with the disease. Is that kinder or is that not kinder? And that's the sort of thing they worry about, that they'll have an extended period of time, a decade or more, in which they get inexorably worse because there's nothing at the moment that we can do to treat or slow the progression.